Are you going through some changes? Is life challenging? Are things difficult? I want to help you with some strategies today. Welcome back to the Help for Leaders podcast. I'm Stacey Harris. Before we get started, I'd love for you to like this video, click subscribe, hit the bell to be notified. We publish videos every Wednesday and you'll get the update. I'm so excited to have Carolyn Grant with me today. She is a transition coach. We're going to be talking all about change and transition. Our world is in chaos right now and we're going through so much change. And I am so excited about this series. We're actually going to be doing 5 episodes all about managing change and transition and what the differences are and how we communicate during times of crisis, how our emotions impact our communication. And so today I want to introduce you to my dear friend, Carolyn. Carolyn, thank you so much for being on the Help for Leaders podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hi. Thank you for having me, Stacey. So I'm Carolyn. I am a wife, a mom, a writer, and a transition coach. Now, I know that sounds like a mouthful, but as you know, my primary role is as mom to my 3 girls, aged between 10 and 16. So they give me a lot to write about, and especially with transitioning through the teenage years. I'm from South Africa.
I love your accent, by the way.
Thank you. And my husband is also South African. But we left the country shortly after we were married to move to London in the UK. We both got work there, and what started out as 2 backpacks and 2 years ended up as 10 years and 2 children. But the story doesn't end there. His company then transferred us to the US. And we've been living here in Austin for the past decade. Oh, and 1 more child born in Texas.
The Texan, yes. Oh, that's so great, Carolyn. I have known Carolyn, I think at least 8 years.
Yeah.
And kind of walked through some transitions, some life transitions. We definitely have. And so, I'm excited to have you just share your wisdom. You've obviously walked through a lot of transitions, life transitions, cross-cultural transitions, work transitions with her husband, so many different things, starting her own coaching business. And so she has so many nuggets to share. And we've been just collaborating on this change process, especially in today's society. I know so many of my clients are walking through some major transitions in their organizations. Back in the spring of this year, there were many articles that came out calling this climate in work the Great Resignation, because 45% of the U.S. workforce had actually resigned in the last 6 months. So many people are transitioning jobs. I know I'm an empty nester for the second time. 2 years ago, we were empty nesters. 7 months later, COVID happened. She's back. It was a really stressful time the last year and a half, but she started classes this week and she's launched again. But I'm feeling all of those same feelings and even different ones, honestly, through this transition. And so we want to just share some tips with you all about communication, all about emotions, all about managing change and transition. So that poses my first question, because I know I've always heard change, transition. I've thought they were the same thing, honestly, for years. And I'm like, change, it's the only constant in our lives. Things are constantly changing. So do we ever stop? So why don't you answer that question for us? What is the difference between change and transition?
It's a great question, because not many people know. So if we can see change as something that's external, it's the thing that's happening to us, whether we have chosen it or it's been forced upon us. It's the situation that has changed, and change happens quickly. It can be a positive change or a negative change. Positive getting married, having kids; negative losing your job. That's the situational change that's happening. Then transition is internal. It's what's happening on the inside. And that is the psychological and emotional process that people are having to go through to adapt to the external change.
Yeah. Okay, that makes so much sense. And I talk so much about self-awareness, and I think even through this process of me really engaging with several of these change and transition models, I realized, oh my gosh, self-awareness is at the foundation. If you are not self-aware, my goodness. And I know even just as I've parented 3 grown children and I've seen them go through those transitional stages in life, from middle school to high school to college to work to marriage now with one of my children, there's major changes, major life stages that we go through. First jobs, changing careers, empty nest. I mean, all of these stages are huge, and we really want to talk about those strategies. So I know a few days ago, you and I were having coffee, and you showed me a bridge, a transitional bridge. And I would love for you to kind of describe that to our listeners of that process.
Sure. So that is a model that was put together by David Pollock, who helped a lot of people with moving. So transitions, so the change is the move, the transition is the family having to deal with the move. So I think if you can picture a bridge, imagine the Golden Gate Bridge, right?
Okay.
From San Francisco to Sausalito, right?
Yes.
And along the bridge, there's these 5 stages. So starting with settled. So this is where you know where you are. You're comfortable in your job. You are happy in your community. You're known. You have status. It feels comfortable and you feel secure and you feel affirmed, okay? Then the change happens and you move on to the second part of the bridge, which we call the unsettled phase or the leaving phase. Now, this phase can be quite unsettling.
Yeah. Hence the title.
Hence the title. Because we're having to let go. We're recognizing that things are coming to an end. And we're having to let go of what we have been comfortable with. So it starts getting into an area of discomfort. And people can feel a sort of emotional distance with people or feel rejected by some who know they are leaving. And it can be quite an emotional time. So that's the unsettling phase. The third one is the one you remember from the picture, because it's this big chaos bubble.
And I feel like that's where the world is right now.
Exactly.
It's chaos. It's confusing. It's
absolutely
constantly changing. We don't know when this is going to end. So I think that's why I was like, chaos. Yes, I totally identify with chaos.
And
right
when
now.
I'm leading families through it, that's where everyone will be like, that's exactly where our family is. We're in chaos. You know, everyone is falling off the bridge pretty much, right? Because we just don't know what's happening and where we're going and where we've been and how we're going to get where we're going. So chaos is really where the big emotions come out. They can be anxiety, depression, confusion, and just a general sense of what is wrong with me? What is going on? Like, why am I not coping with this change? And I think this is a time where I'm really trying to encourage people. This is normal. Like, this is the process of transition. This is why it's important to talk about transition, because otherwise people feel like, what's wrong with me? Why can I not, take, for example, me moving from London to America. That was probably one of the hardest changes I had to ever make, or transitions to go through. And what confused me was that I had wanted to come to America, but then here I am feeling sad, and even though I'd wanted the change. So we'll talk more about that later. Yeah. So after chaos, we have the resettling phase. So that's where you're finding a place again. You're observing your environment, seeing actually maybe there is a place where I can plug in. It's when we start to look for mentors to say, okay, this is new, whether it's a new job or a new place, like how do I fit in here? How do I find my place again? And then the final stage is, again, another settled phase, or a re-entering or re-involvement phase.
Okay.
Because you're finding those roles that you used to have where you were before. You're finding those friendships that you used to have before. You're finding that place where you can say, oh, I belong here and I matter.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So good. I love that visual of the bridge, and I love that you normalized all of this, because it's human behavior, right?
Yeah.
And I would say, in the lens of DISC, because I see everything through those lenses, that each of our behavioral styles experience that same process very differently.
Absolutely.
And I can even imagine in families, when you've got multiple people with all kinds of different ways to process information, make decisions, that's a challenge because one person may be running ahead and one person is like, wait. And if you have heard anything that I've ever shared on previous podcasts where I talk about dominant behavior, those individuals love a challenge. They love change. Right. It's like, this is my opportunity to fix something, my opportunity to dive in, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to get there, and let's run forward. Where the high eyes are more optimistic about the change and, excited, but also can be emotional about the leaving behind and all of that, but still kind of seeing the optimistic, glass half full, the possibilities. I'd say the steady style, which is your behavioral style,
it's me.
can have a little more difficulty with just that process because of just the way you're built. It's not right or wrong. No style is better than the other. We're just all different. And so if we do have that understanding of, okay, this is why I'm struggling now and my husband is not, or my children are processing this differently, or my coworker feels this particular way, because we're all so different. And then that C style can actually get stuck, really stuck, because they're trying to figure out. They want proof. They want evidence. Is this really
good idea, right? Is this a good idea to make this change,
especially a cross-cultural change? I know right now, all over social media, I even know a friend that just literally sold their home, packed up, and they are traveling for the next year. So many people have that option right now because global workforce is mobile. It's virtual. We're all, virtual. My daughter is in New York City, and when we're filming this, the city flooded last night.
I know,
and she was supposed to have an in-person class today. Well, it's virtual, and thankfully we have that technology in place where we can do that in a moment's notice. And so I would say technology is helping and hurting some styles of just losing that connection, even with people in the process. So we're going to be talking a lot about change and transition and even some other models in this series. But today I just wanted to kind of whet your appetite and give you a little bit of information. First of all, I hope you have realized that transition and change is normal. All of the feelings that you're feeling are normal, but there is a process and there's hope of getting from that unsettled, even in chaos. The hope is that we're going to get to Sausalito unscathed, that we're going to get there. Well, maybe not. Maybe there's some bruises along the way.
There's bumps and bruises, but there's also growth. I think that's something we mustn't forget. And I think if we can look ahead with that feeling of, gosh, this is hard, but I'm going to push through because I know I'm going to grow through this, because that's what happens with adversity, right?
Oh, that's so good. I love it. So we're going to pause there on opportunities for growth, and we're going to be sharing with you more information. So stick with us. Join next week as we dive more into transition and those ending phases of the process. If you love this episode, I'd love for you to click here for more content, and please click here to subscribe.